Ever feel like experiential learning is just one of those buzzwords everyone throws around,
Yeah, kind of like they know it's important, but
but no one really defines it?
right.
Well, today we're going deep on that,
Really gonna unpack it
specifically how it all connects back to,
to actually figuring out what students are learning.
exactly, assessment.
Yeah, and the research we're looking at today, it's amazing. It really shows how universities are starting to think about this whole thing.
Like really differently.
Yeah, it's more than just grades.
Right.
Way more.
Well-
It's about a whole ecosystem of experiences.
That contribute to a student's development.
Exactly.
So we're talking about stuff like study abroad programs,
Oh, absolutely.
first-year experiences,
Sure.
even like how individual classes are actually designed.
All of that. The researchers actually identified 35 different types of experiential learning.
35.
I know, right? It all
Wow.
feeds into this really intricate web, like an ecosystem.
Okay, so this ecosystem idea is really key.
Yeah.
But real quick, for anyone who's maybe new to this whole thing, can you break down, like, what exactly is experiential learning and why does it matter so much?
Sure. At its core, it's about moving past passive learning, like just sitting in a lecture hall, taking notes.
Right.
Instead, you're actively using the knowledge.
Applying it.
Yes. And then you reflect on what happened.
Think about it critically.
Exactly. And then you integrate what you learned back into the theory. So it's a cycle, basically.
That keeps building on itself.
Right.
So it's not just about doing stuff, it's the whole process, right, of learning through those actions.
Totally.
And that connects back to, what we want students to actually get out of their education,
Absolutely. And that's where student learning outcomes come in.
SLOs.
Yeah. Those are the skills, knowledge, competencies we want students to develop.
And experiential learning is a great way to see them in action.
For sure.
So we're talking about things like critical thinking, problem solving, communication.
All of those essential skills that go beyond just textbook knowledge.
Yeah. And with experiential learning, we can see students actually using these skills in real situations.
Exactly. Like, think about it. A traditional exam, it might test if a student remembers facts,
Right.
but a service learning project,
Right.
that lets you see how they use those facts to solve an actual problem in their community.
It's like putting knowledge into practice.
Yes. It's a much richer way to assess because you're seeing the SLOs come to life.
Okay, this is making a lot more sense now, but I bet some people listening are thinking, why are SLOs such a big deal?
Oh, they're huge. Think of SLOs as a roadmap
Oh,
for both teaching and learning.
okay, I like that.
So for faculty, it helps them design their courses and how they're going to assess students.
And for students,
It gives them transparency. They know what's expected and how their learning will be measured.
so everyone's on the same page.
Exactly. And for universities,
Yeah.
it shows accountability.
Accountability in terms of
Proving their programs actually gives students the skills they need.
for the real world.
Right. So SLOs move us beyond just these vague ideas of teaching and learning.
Towards something much more concrete.
Yes, specific goals everyone can work towards.
Okay, so we've got the importance of SLOs and how experiential learning helps us see them in action. But how are universities actually doing this? Like, what are the trends?
Well, one big trend is these experiential learning offices popping up.
Dedicated offices for that.
Yep. They're bringing together all these separate programs like study abroad, undergraduate research, even career services sometimes.
Under one roof
Exactly. It's an attempt to create a more cohesive approach.
to experiential learning.
Yeah. Make it more intentional.
But I imagine that comes with challenges.
Oh, for sure.
Like, how do you even define what counts as experiential learning?
Right. It's a huge task, especially across so many different programs and fields.
It'd be like, okay, define art.
Kinda, yeah.
I can't even imagine.
Seriously. But that's where the hard work comes in. Clarifying definitions, ensuring quality, figuring out how to keep it all going.
Because ultimately, it's not just about checking a box, right?
No, not at all.
It's about making sure those experiences actually lead to specific learning outcomes.
Absolutely. And that's where those 35 different types of experiential learning come in.
Each one contributing to those SLOs in its own way.
Exactly.
So we've got this whole ecosystem of experiences feeding into these student learning outcomes. But did the researchers look at how different people view experiential learning?
Oh, absolutely. Like, how do faculty see it versus students versus administrators? That was a key part of their research.
Yeah.
One of the most interesting findings, faculty actually benefit from incorporating experiential learning.
Even though it's more work for them.
Yes. Isn't that fascinating?
It is. Why would they take on more work when they're already so busy?
Well, think about it. Experiential learning puts students in charge of their learning.
They're more active.
Exactly. And for faculty, that can be really rewarding. Instead of just lecturing, they're guiding students through these real projects. They get to see those aha moments.
Witness that growth firsthand.
Yes. And see their students develop those skills that go way beyond a textbook.
So it's not just good for students, it's good for the instructors too.
Exactly. It creates a much more dynamic and engaging environment for everyone.
I love that. And it probably lets faculty bring their own research and expertise into the classroom in a more meaningful way too.
Oh, definitely. For a lot of them, that connection between research and teaching is really fulfilling.
Okay, this is fascinating stuff, but I'm looking at the clock, and we've only just scratched the surface of this whole experiential learning ecosystem. Anything else you want to highlight about like the key players involved?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is to remember that students are at the heart of this,
They're the ones having these experiences,
reflecting on them.
growing and developing.
Exactly. But it's also important to understand the perspectives of the faculty and administrators.
Because they play a huge role in shaping those experiences.
For sure, supporting them too.
This is giving me a lot to think about. We've laid some good groundwork here.
Understanding what experiential learning is, why SLOs matter.
And how this ecosystem brings everyone together.
Exactly.
But let's take a quick break, and then we'll dive even deeper. Okay, so we're back, and we've been talking about this whole idea of an experiential learning ecosystem.
And how it all connects to those student learning outcomes, those SLOs.
Right, these SLOs. But let's get practical here. How are universities actually measuring whether students are hitting those outcomes through all these different experiences?
That's where assessment comes in.
Ah, yes, assessment.
And it's one of the most, I think, both exciting and challenging parts of this whole thing.
How so?
Well, we can't just rely on the old ways of doing things.
Like exams and papers.
Exactly. We have to think bigger. Like, what data are we actually collecting? And does it show those real-world skills we want students to have?
Because, I mean, a multiple choice test can't really tell you if a student can work well in a team, right?
Exactly. Or if they can handle unexpected challenges during, say, a community project.
Right. So what are universities doing differently?
Lots of cool stuff. One university, and this is fascinating, they're using network analysis to look at student collaboration.
Network analysis. What is that?
So basically, they're mapping out how students interact during group projects.
Like who's contributing ideas?
Yeah. And who's taking on leadership roles, how well they're communicating, if they're working together effectively as a team.
So it's not just about the end product.
Nope. It's about the process, the dynamics, those collaboration skills that are so important these days.
Especially in the workplace, right?
Totally. And this data is super valuable. Students get feedback on their teamwork, and faculty can see where they might need to adjust their teaching.
To better support students.
Exactly.
I like it. What other kinds of cool assessment stuff are universities doing?
Oh, all sorts of creative things. Another university is using portfolios.
Portfolios. Like what art portfolios?
Kind of. Students collect stuff from their experiences. Reflections, project deliverables, even feedback from mentors.
It's like a showcase of their learning journey.
Exactly. And it's super helpful for showing potential employers or grad schools what they've learned.
Way more impactful than just a list of skills on a resume.
For sure. It's real evidence of what they can do.
So it's not just checking off boxes, it's helping students understand their strengths, where they can grow, and how to show that to others.
Exactly. And this all comes back to why those SLOs are so important. They give us that framework for the experiences and how we assess them.
Okay, so we've got these innovative assessment methods. But let's be honest, there must be challenges, right?
Oh, absolutely. One of the biggest is just figuring out what counts as evidence of learning.
With so many different experiences in SLOs, I
Yeah.
can imagine that gets tricky.
Very tricky. And how do you standardize assessment for things like critical thinking?
Yeah.
You know, skills that are hard to measure. It's tough. You need a lot of clear communication and collaboration between faculty and administrators to make sure everyone's using the same standards.
Yeah, especially when you have faculty who might not want to change how they do things or students who don't see the point of all this.
Oh, definitely. And then you have administrators trying to keep everyone happy and on track.
It's a lot to juggle.
It is. But the good news is the research shows universities are getting better at this. They're training faculty, creating better assessment tools, and building a culture of constantly improving how they approach experiential learning.
It's a work in progress, but it sounds like they're headed in the right direction. Anything else about assessment our listeners should keep in mind?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is to remember that assessment shouldn't be seen as a bad thing. It's not about punishing students.
It's about helping them learn and grow.
Exactly. It's about giving feedback that helps students develop the skills they need for their future.
So it's all part of that learning cycle we talked about earlier.
Absolutely. That feedback loop is what makes experiential learning so powerful.
Okay, so we've really dug into the whole assessment piece of experiential learning.
Hmm.
We've seen the challenges, the cool new approaches, and how those SLOs guide everything. Now, I'm curious to see how this all looks in the real world. You said the research found a lot of different approaches. Can you give us some examples of what this actually looks like at universities?
Oh, definitely. There are tons of great examples. One that comes to mind is a university that's really gone all in on this idea of an experiential learning ecosystem.
Like they made it central to everything.
Yes, they have this centralized experiential learning office that manages all things experiential.
So internships, service learning, research, study abroad, it's all connected.
All of it. And they even help faculty incorporate experiential learning into their courses. It's like a hub for everyone.
I bet that makes things a lot easier to manage.
It does. And they've also got this great assessment framework that ties into their overall learning outcomes. They use a mix of data.
Like student reflections, what faculty observe, even what employers say.
Yep. And they want a full picture of how students are learning and how well the programs are working.
Sounds like they're really trying to capture everything students are gaining from these experiences.
Exactly. And they're using that data to make the programs better, decide how to use their resources, and even show everyone how valuable experiential learning is.
Okay, so that's a very centralized approach. What about universities that are doing things a bit differently?
Another cool example is a university that's woven experiential learning into each department and program.
So each department has its own approach.
Right. They tailor the experiences and assessments to their specific field.
So, like, a biology department might focus on lab research, while a history department might focus on community projects.
Exactly. It's all about what makes sense for that discipline.
That sounds really flexible, but I can also see how it could get messy. How do you make sure everyone is on the same page? Especially with those learning outcomes.
That's where communication is key. This university created a faculty learning community focused on experiential learning.
So faculty from different departments can share ideas and figure out solutions together.
Exactly. They talk about what works, what doesn't, and come up with assessment strategies they can all use.
It's like building a support network for faculty who are trying to do this well.
It is. And that community also helps connect faculty with administrators so everyone is in the loop.
I love these examples. It's so clear that there's no one right way to do experiential learning.
Right. Every university is different.
But are there any common themes or best practices that come out of the research? Like, what can other universities learn from all this?
Definitely. One big takeaway is the importance of communication and collaboration.
No matter how a university approaches it.
Exactly. Students, faculty, administrators, community partners, everyone needs to be on the same page about what they're trying to achieve.
So it's about having a shared understanding of what experiential learning is, why it matters, and how to work together to make it work.
And it's about being intentional. We can't just throw students into experiences and hope for the best.
Right, it has to be planned out carefully, with chances for reflection and assessment that actually help students learn.
Exactly.
This is giving me so much to think about. It's clear that experiential learning is a powerful way to approach education. But before we move on, I want to shift gears a bit and focus on the students. What does all of this mean for them?
Oh, that's a great question. I think the most important thing for students is to embrace experiential learning.
Don't just go through the motions.
Right. Look for opportunities to use what you're learning in real-world situations.
Like internships.
Internships, volunteering, research, study abroad.
Be an active part of your education.
Yes. And when you do have those experiences, take the time to think about what you're learning, how you're growing, and how it all connects to what you want to do in the future.
So you can really articulate what you've gained from those experiences.
Exactly. Not just for employers or grad schools, but for yourself. Understanding your own strengths and areas for growth is key.
It's all about self-awareness.
Yes. And that's really how you get the most out of experiential learning and set yourself up for success.
This has been such an eye-opening look at experiential learning. We've covered a lot today. The theory, the challenges, the innovative ways universities are assessing it, and all the cool examples of what it looks like in practice. But before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to ask one final, really important question. We've talked a lot about how universities are approaching experiential learning and how it affects those student learning outcomes. But what about the future? Like, what's next for all of this? What should we be keeping an eye on?
Ooh, that's a big question. I think as experiential learning keeps growing, we're going to see more focus on making it personal.
Personalization. Makes sense. Like with all the online learning and adaptive tech these days, students want education to be more tailored to them.
Exactly. And experiential learning is perfect for that. Students can choose experiences that really fit their interests and what they want to do for a career.
Like imagine a student who's passionate about sustainability could do internships at environmental organizations.
Yes. And community projects focused on urban farming.
Maybe even study abroad programs looking at renewable energy solutions in other countries.
Exactly. It's all about moving away from that one-size-fits-all approach.
That's really cool. What about technology? How do you see that playing into the future of experiential learning?
Oh, technology is huge. It's already playing a role, and it's only going to get bigger. Think about virtual reality and augmented reality.
VR and AR.
Yeah. Those can create these super realistic simulations where students can practice skills in a safe environment. Like a nursing student could use VR to practice complicated medical procedures before they ever work with a real patient.
Wow, that's amazing. And it opens up so many possibilities, especially for fields where real-world practice could be dangerous.
Absolutely. And don't forget about all the data we can collect.
Right. Data.
As we get more information about students' experiences and how they're doing, we can use that to create better learning paths, see where they might need extra help, and even give them personalized feedback.
So it's not just about making things look cool with VR. It's about using data to make experiential learning more effective for each student.
Exactly.
But with all this focus on personalization and technology, we can't forget about the human side of things.
Oh, absolutely. No matter how advanced tech gets, we need that human connection.
Right, like mentorship and guidance from faculty.
Exactly. Faculty mentors are so important. They guide students, support them, and help them understand what they're learning.
Because sometimes you need someone who knows you and your goals to help you see how those experiences connect to your education and your future.
For sure. And as experiential learning becomes more personalized and tech-driven, mentors become even more important. They'll be the ones helping students navigate all of that, make good choices about their learning, and see how it all ties together.
This conversation has been so insightful. It's clear that there are a lot of exciting things on the horizon for experiential learning. But let's be realistic. There have to be some challenges too, right? What are some of the roadblocks you see?
Well, one of the biggest is making sure everyone has equal access to these opportunities.
Right, not all students have the same resources or support.
Exactly. And that can make it hard for some students to participate in things like study abroad or internships.
That's a really important point. If we want experiential learning to truly change higher education, it has to be available to all students.
Absolutely. Universities need to offer financial help, create inclusive learning environments, and be creative in making sure these experiences are available to everyone.
I imagine assessing these increasingly complex and personalized experiences is also a challenge, right? How do we make sure the quality is there as we move toward more individualized learning?
That's a great question. As experiential learning becomes more diverse, assessment has to evolve too. We have to find ways to measure not just knowledge and skills, but also those harder to define things like critical thinking and problem solving.
And those cross-cultural skills that are so important in today's world.
Right. And we need to make sure assessment is a tool for learning and growth, not just for grading.
So it's about giving students feedback that helps them get the most out of their experiences.
Exactly. And that's where everyone needs to work together.
Faculty, administrators, assessment experts, even the students themselves.
Yes. We all need to collaborate to create assessment strategies that are authentic, meaningful, and aligned with the goals of experiential learning.
This has been such a fascinating exploration of the future of experiential learning. We've talked about the amazing possibilities, the challenges, and the role that everyone plays in shaping what's to come. But as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought-provoking idea.
Let's remember that experiential learning isn't just about getting students ready for a job. It's about getting them ready for life. It's about helping them develop curiosity, creativity, resilience, those qualities that will help them navigate a world that's constantly changing, embrace learning throughout their lives, and contribute to their communities and the world around them.
That's a powerful message. It's a reminder that experiential learning isn't just some passing trend. It's a fundamental change in how we think about education, one that has the potential to help students reach their full potential and create a better future for all of us. This has been The Deep Dive, your shortcut to being well-informed. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.